Before we go any further, I think it's important to identify evil and to break it into at least two categories. And the first category would be natural evil. Natural evil are naturally caused in the world. These are caused not by the free choice of a free creature. And that's going to distinguish this from another type of evil. But what falls into this category? Well, things like natural disasters, weather related things. A tornado happens and the tornado wrecks the town, and unfortunately there are fatalities in the tornado. And people wake up the next morning going, this happened. Now, nobody caused the tornado. No free agent stood over here and said, I'm going to cause a tornado and I'm going to send it through that town there. The same can be true when it comes to something like plate tectonics. And an earthquake happens. And families are devastated and communities are torn apart and tragedy happens. Or, for example, the side of a mountain in the middle of the night just falls off the mountain. That's Quake Lake up in Montana. It happened. Extraterrestrial impacts here, I'm not talking about E.T. coming from another planet. I'm talking about if you ever saw Armageddon and the asteroids hit the earth and it wipes people out and things of that nature. So basically anything that would fall under natural weather, earth, out of earth, etc., etc. Another thing that would fall under this would be diseases. And although we could make some distinctions when it comes to something, for example, like cancer, we could say, well, that person smoked for 40 years and they developed lung cancer. Cause and effect. Is that really evil? That's not our position this morning. We also know that there are cancers that just happen. Nobody can tell you why so-and-so got that cancer. It just happened, you know. Plagues and epidemics. We're in a relatively sterile environment today. We don't have plagues and epidemics the way they used to have them, but it still happens. And it's not necessarily somebody making the choice to make everybody sick. You know, it's just something that has happened in world history. And finally, disabilities. You know, people are born disabled in various ways. And those just happen in some situations and circumstances. And even if they ever definitively one day prove that aspartame does cause autism or aspartame does cause Alzheimer's, nobody drank that Diet Coke thinking, I want to give my unborn child autism, or I want to give myself Alzheimer's, you know. So here we're talking about those kinds of things. One other category to just try and catch everything that falls under the natural evil would be accidents that truly nobody caused it. We sometimes call it dumb luck. We sometimes call it happenstance. Here we have a little bit of weather meets accident. The snow fell, the black ice formed, and the car went off the road. Nobody stood there saying, I'm going to make that car go off the road, you know. Nobody chose to drink that night and then go drive, and that caused the accident. We just have those kinds of things where accidents happen and truly nobody is at fault. Now we're going to put natural evil against moral evil. Moral evil could be free choices made by free creatures. That's where somebody or some group decided to do this of their own choice to do it. What would some of these be? Well, one of the most obvious would be murder. Somebody chooses to end the life of somebody else. Now here, we could get into nuance in the fact that even in our legal system, you can be charged with first-degree murder, you can be charged with involuntary manslaughter. And we recognize that malice and forethought versus accident, even with negligence, is not identical. We see that, right? And so, murder, here we're using that as a term of so-and-so deliberately, intentionally, with malice and forethought ended somebody's life, and we call that murder, right? Another thing would be rape, and this, though, brings up a whole new idea. I want to be very clear with my language here so that my words can't be twisted into some way that Ozzy said rape sometimes can be a good thing. That's not what I said. I want you to think of something like water. Water is neither good nor bad. Water can be used to water crops. Water can be used to drink and keep you alive, but you can also drown in water. Is it water's fault that you drowned in it? Probably not. Is it anybody's fault that somebody can drown in water? Probably not. So water is neither good nor bad. Things can happen from water. Food. Who here likes food? Food can be used to nourish you, to keep you alive. It can be used for taste and good ways. If you eat food, though, you might get food poisoning. Your only option is starvation or food poisoning. What do you do? So when it comes to something like rape, is sex has been taken, and sex is neither good nor bad unto itself. It can be good when used for marital intimacy and procreation and so forth, but rape would be taking something and using it in a bad way, perverting how it should be used, using it in rape or abuse or so forth. Now, we could literally go on to infinity. Thank you. Trying to figure out how many types of moral evil there are and what qualifies as moral evil or what doesn't qualify as moral evil. The bottom line is we all know that moral evil exists, right? And I want to reference Fyodor Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. I do not want to imply that I've read this entire book. This is a very, very long book. I have read Notes from the Underground. I have read The Dream of a Ridiculous Man. I've only read one chapter of this book, and it happens to be Book 5, Chapter 4, The Rebellion. In Dostoevsky's story here, two brothers are talking about the existence of God, and in this chapter, one brother presents the very argument that we're talking about, and he does so in a way that is beautiful, not what he describes being beautiful, but his description of the problem of evil is so perfect that the brothers Karamazov is actually found in both Christian texts that try to explain evil. It's also found as an example in secular texts that's trying to explain the existence of evil, because he does so perfectly here. The one brother is telling the other brother, this atrocity happened. And then this atrocity happened. And then this atrocity happened. And the worst of all was this atrocity. And if all of these atrocities can happen, and God doesn't do anything, then I don't want anything to do with God. So he, that brother in that text, puts forward our argument in such a Dostoevsky kind of way that, like I said, both Christian and secular have used this as the launching point for the argument.